So early contract extensions has become a popular topic across Major League Baseball this week. So we decided to dive into the top 5 Cardinals that the team should be offering an extension to today. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you. It is Thursday evening, April 3rd, 2025. Cardinals had the off day on Thursday, so no game to talk about. I wanted to get into a topic that we briefly mentioned in the podcast on Wednesday, and enough people said, hey, I would actually like to hear a little bit of an expansion on that topic, and that's the topic of contract extensions across Major League Baseball. And I'm talking more specifically about the early extensions that teams don't really need to do, but we're seeing it more and more often with players that are even pre-arbitration eligible. Teams saying, hey, we want to lock this guy up and make sure that he is a part of not only our present, but our future. It's kind of an intriguing conversation in the context of the St. Louis Cardinals right now because they are very much in that transition year. And I don't think that's just applicable to the players on the field. It's literally what's happening in the front office. 2025, John Mozeliak is still running the show, but by the end of the season, it'll be Chaim Bloom calling the shots and making the decisions on such things as contract extensions. The Cardinals have a number of young players who we would like to believe are going to be a part of the team's core in the future. But this is not necessarily the time where the team is making those decisions and planting their flags on certain players. For right or wrong, it just doesn't feel like this is the moment for it to happen. But as you look across Major League Baseball and you see it happening more frequently, is it one of those deals that we look at and say, you know, it couldn't kill the Cardinals to maybe approach it in a similar manner? We're talking about guys like Jackson Merrill signing a big contract extension with the Padres after his awesome rookie season in 2024. But you can even take it a step further than that and look at the Boston Red Sox in the way that they have approached Kristian Campbell, giving him a contract extension really before he's even played 5 games in his life at the big league level. I don't know if that's actually factual. He has just joined the Boston Red Sox, was one of their top prospects, and obviously we're a week into the season. So if he had played 5 games, I apologize for the misspeak, but they just gave him like an 8 or 9 year deal for $60 million guaranteed. And there's always incentives and options and things like that tacked on to the end. But that's a player who got the call up, earned his opportunity in spring training. They gave him a spot on the big league team, and already they have given him an extension. I think it would be legitimately comparable to Victor Scott II getting an extension like today, and maybe even not comparable because he actually played with the Cardinals last year. Kristian Campbell is in his first week of Major League Baseball, and the Red Sox said, yeah, let's make a commitment to this player. Let's decide that now is the time to plant our flag and send a signal not only to our young players that, like, if you're a dude and you're going to be part of our team, there is a realm in which we are willing to build around you and lock you in. And then that message also gets sent to the fan base. So Boston Red Sox fans can know, you know what, it's probably safe to buy the Kristian Campbell jersey. I can be excited about this player because the Red Sox are excited about this player and they're committed to him. So tonight on the podcast, since the Cardinals did not have a game on Thursday, I decided what I was going to do is run down the top 5 Cardinals right now that I believe the team should be willing to offer a contract extension today. Now, realistically, this is probably not going to happen. The Cardinals, in the place that they're in right now, with a transition year going on in the front office, are not very likely in the first or second week of the season to offer anybody a contract extension. But I think I want to advocate a little bit for a change in direction and a change in the viewpoint on that, although I don't know that the Cardinals are necessarily going to be particularly responsive to this plea. I think it's one that makes a lot of sense when you factor in all of the extracurriculars surrounding this Cardinals team right now. By that, I mean the fan base. Like, what's the temperature of the Cardinal fans in Cardinal Nation that have been pretty much a very supportive group over the years? And we're seeing that first homestand of the season, attendance was down. We knew it would be. The Cardinals knew it would be. This isn't surprising to anybody. It was particularly noticeable, though, during the Angels series, right? You had the opening day, which was the same as always. They packed the house. The weekend was pretty solid in terms of attendance. But when you got to a midweek series and it's the Angels in town, they've got Mike Trout, but not much else, and it's bad weather, there's storms in the area, there's a chill in the air. Ultimately, the Cardinals went 20,000 over the 3 days, and that was announced attendance, right? That was not butts and seats. Butts and seats was significantly less than that. I only covered the Tuesday game, but I got to tell you, not since the COVID-impacted 2020 and 2021 seasons have I seen fewer butts and seats at Busch Stadium. Covering those games in 2020, I was in the ballpark. Nobody else was. No fans, right? Media was there. We had to be spread out in the press box. I remember the day that Andrew Miller, who was a reliever for the Cardinals at the time, literally walked up into the press box. Probably wasn't supposed to do it at the time, but he figured, there's nobody here. Let me wander around and see what I can see on a day that I'm not pitching in the game. That's stuff that literally happened. And I think it happened before the game, so it wasn't as though, he should have been out in the bullpen. It was just kind of everybody's downtime. But I say all this to indicate, the attendance is down for the St. Louis Cardinals right now. And the memories of all of those COVID years are sort of what comes back to me when I look at the crowd that the Cardinals had on Tuesday night. Again, weather, school night, early in the season, the offseason, the Cardinals didn't make really much of an attempt to invigorate the fan base. And look, that was the direction that ownership chose to take. Ultimately, your big reward as a Cardinals fan this offseason, Arenado stayed. Right? He rejected the trade that they tried to make. And the reason I say that's a reward, look at his numbers. He's already off to a really good start. I think he's going to have a much better season than what he did last year. And at the end of the day, the Cardinals win more games because he's on the team. That was always going to be the case, but it did get in the way of the direction of the organization that they were trying to put out there. But also, I think Nolan Gorman is maybe the only one on the planet that is negatively impacted by the fact that Nolan Arenado is still on the team. If you're rooting for the Cardinals, having a Gold Glove caliber third baseman and a guy that's hitting the way that he is at the beginning of the season is a good thing. The opportunity for Gorman is going to be more sporadic for the time being, but otherwise, you're glad that Arenado's here. But for that to have been the big win of the offseason was not necessarily going to reinvigorate Cardinals fans, who have kind of gotten fed up over the past few years with the notion of, hey, be patient, hey, be patient. Oh, by the way, the patience is not going to be rewarded, and we're going to go into a little bit of a retool. So for attendance to be what it's been, again, early in the season, I do think this Cardinals team is showing signs that it's going to be a very compelling watch this year. We'll see if that is something they can sustain. But it's not surprising, right, to anybody that attendance has been down. But if you're the St. Louis Cardinals and you're saying, how do we, in a year where we're not necessarily going to invest in big free agents, which they did not, where we're not necessarily expecting giant leaps forward in the standings, which, although I think there's a world in which that happens, it wasn't the general expectation, I think, from ownership in the front office. When you cut payroll significantly, it's going to be difficult to maintain a level of competitiveness. Now, they can still do it, and I honestly predict that they will. I don't think they're necessarily going to dip too far below the 83, 84 win total that they were able to put up last year. I think this team has a lot of talent on it. But if you're a Cardinals owner, or if you're in the front office, and you're thinking, how do we reset the direction of the franchise moving forward, would you not consider, if it, say, wasn't particularly cost prohibitive in the here and now, would you consider locking up some of the future faces of the franchise to be able to sell that to the fan base? Reinvigorate a little bit at very little cost to you in the present day, and potentially for a level of risk in the future that is honestly negligible. When you consider the place that a lot of these names are in right now in their respective careers, could it be kind of a no-brainer for the Cardinals to consider this? Again, I don't think they're necessarily going to, but I'm gonna make my stump speech for 5 players right now that I think the Cardinals should be actively trying to extend. Like I said, I think with the fact that you've got one guy running the club in terms of baseball operations today, and it's going to be somebody different by mid-October, that makes it a little bit challenging. When you have a TV deal that had to be renegotiated and ownership is potentially a little bit skittish about what the future is going to look like, especially as attendance plummets, yeah, you understand. Like you can make peace with the reasons the Cardinals are not necessarily going to go into the realm that we are suggesting in this video that they do, but we're going to do it anyway. All right, I'm going to start off with number 5, and I think number 5, I'm going to work my way from 5 to 1. Number 5 to me is a player that the Cardinals had an opportunity to do right by a little bit more as recently as this past offseason, and they didn't do it. I'm talking about Brendan Donovan. He's number 5 on my list of Cardinals that I believe should be offered a contract extension today. And I've actually got Donovan ranked one spot above. If I had extended this list to 6, I would have included a player who is off to an absolutely torrid start for St. Louis. I think is going to be an all-star this year, and I think should be somebody that is part of the future of the Cardinals. They should probably extend this guy too. But my concern with Lars Nootbaar is the fact that I think the Cardinals might already be too late. With the way that Lars Nootbaar has begun this season, if he continues on the pace he's on, he'll delve a little bit deeper into arbitration each and every year. After already winning his ARB case against the Cardinals this past offseason, I think Lars Nootbaar is getting a little bit too close to free agency, combined with his current performance. Maybe it's possible. Maybe he would be more than happy to lock up long-term with the Cardinals. I don't know. I can't speak for him. Cardinals should still offer it 100%. But I think in the case of Brendan Donovan, you have a chance to almost right a wrong. And I get that it's a business and that arbitration is one of those things that the players understand. You take it in stride. It's just part of the deal. But when we talked with Brendan Donovan in the clubhouse of the Cardinals complex at Jupiter, Florida, earlier this spring, and he was reacting to the fact that he did not win his arbitration case against the team. He had filed at one salary, the team filed at another, and ultimately the arbitration panel sided with the team. But that was a little bit frustrating, I think, for Brendan Donovan. Although he handled it like a champ, he took it like a pro, and even in the way that he publicly spoke about the ordeal, he was very, very professional. But I look back on that and think, Brendan Donovan is the type of player that the Cardinals should want to build around. You may look at the offensive numbers and say, well, they don't really jump out at me. I think there are a lot of Cardinals fans who are maybe on the fence when it comes to Brendan Donovan. And look, to begin this season, he's got a 570 OPS, so through the first week with a 200 batting average, he hasn't done a ton to necessarily jump off the page. But Brendan Donovan's not going to finish this year with a 570 OPS. In fact, you can pretty much know within a handful of percentage points what he might finish with. Rookie year ended up with a 773 OPS. After that, 787. Last year, coming off of a surgery where he had to repair the UCL and work his way back into the field, did so without missing any time, right? Had the surgery late 2023, was ready, full go defensively by the beginning of spring 2024. Still ended up with a 759 OPS. Each of those years, he was at least a 112 OPS plus, which means he was better than 12% above league average in the majority of those seasons, and at a minimum was at that 12% mark. For his career, he is a 15% above league average hitter with a 115 OPS plus and a 767 OPS. Brendan Donovan is as steady as they come, doesn't strike out a ton. Last year, in what was ostensibly a down year for the OPS, he led his own career in home runs, set a career high with 14, and he also only struck out 81 times in a career high 652 plate appearances. That's like the modern miracle in terms of strikeout rate, because guys tend to strike out a bunch in the modern era. Brendan Donovan really doesn't all that frequently. He still hits for a little bit of pop. He'll give you some doubles. He'll give you a solid on-base percentage. He's a career 362 on base. It's kind of why I've been talking about it in terms of thinking maybe the Cardinals should have Brendan Donovan as their leadoff hitter and bump Nootbaar down to number 2. Now, I understand why you can't do that, because if you went Donovan, Nootbaar, Contreras, Arenado, you're going left, right, and in a modern lineup, that's not really the play, so I totally understand that. I just want to vouch for Brendan Donovan as a guy that I think profiles a little bit better as a table setter than as somebody down in the order where he's in more of an RBI spot, but I digress. I think Brendan Donovan, with his statistics that he carries And this is going to be a common theme for a lot of the guys on this list of 5 that I think the Cardinals should be extending right now, or at least making an effort to do so. Donovan has a floor to his game that I really don't think is going to drop out. I don't think he is going to just fall off a cliff at any point because of his style of play. He's a former Gold Glove winner, so you know he can play defense just about anywhere you'd ask him to. And maybe that was part of the reason he loses the arbitration case. The Cardinals kind of use that versatility against him and say, well, he doesn't really profile as a left fielder who, hits a bunch of home runs or, has this type of OPS. He doesn't really profile either as a second baseman because he's not been as consistently available at that position. Like, whatever the ways that they were able to kind of use that against Brenden Donovan, I think is a shame. I understand it. It just means the Cardinals have very good lawyers working for them, right? Very good analysts that are figuring out the best way to save the team a few dollars. But I think this would be an opportunity to do right by Brenden Donovan and say, look, one of these early extensions, we're going to buy out the last couple of years of ARB for you to where we don't have to go back and forth with this over the next couple of years. And then we'll buy out a couple of years of free agency and throw on some options at the end of it to where you can lock him up and have Cardinals fans knowing he'll be part of the deal for the next handful of years, maybe more. Do I think it's going to happen? No, not imminently. If he ends up with a really good season, which I expect to happen, does Chaim Bloom approach it differently? We'll see. With the Tampa Bay Rays, Chaim Bloom in that front office, again, he wasn't the head honcho at the time, but Chaim Bloom was definitely involved in a front office that really was noted for kind of taking those guys to arbitration and then trading them while they still had some value. I think the Cardinals should approach it differently under Chaim Bloom, and I would like to believe that the St. Louis Cardinals are going to be a little bit more willing than the ownership of the Tampa Bay Rays were to open up the purse strings and allow for a core to develop and to then be paid and kept by the organization. That might be a reason that it didn't happen with Chaim Bloom in Tampa. I don't think it's fair to just say, oh, it's a reflection of Chaim Bloom. Again, he was under some others like Andrew Friedman at various points in that front office, and he had an ownership group that he had to answer to. You don't want to see the Cardinals turn into the Rays. It could be replicated. Perhaps that success could be replicated, but I just don't think that in St. Louis with the level of fan support that has been consistently given, and then again, maybe it was a different front office with John Mozeliak and company, and even the ownership group asking for patience over the recent years, and to have not been rewarded frequently enough with playoff caliber teams, and certainly teams that have been able to advance very far in the postseason. I'd like to think that ownership, after they can kind of resettle and reset the foundation of this team, can look in the mirror and say, we do need to invest at a level commensurate with what the fan support has been over the years if we are to expect that fan support to continue. So for me, Brenden Donovan's a player that's already on this team that fans should gravitate toward if they haven't already because of the approach that he takes to the game, because he's a stand-up individual. He's the kind of role model that I think you'd want for your kids growing up as Cardinals fans. All those things, I think, contribute to the idea that right now I think would be a great time for the Cardinals to offer an extension to Brenden Donovan. Again, they just came off of a winter in which they not only didn't offer him an extension, but they ended up taking him to ARB and winning. So I don't think it's coming imminently, but I'd look for it. If I'm Chaim Bloom, it's one of the very first things that I would do, almost regardless of the season that Donovan has. Because guess what? If he has a little bit of a lackluster season, he's going to be even more affordable. Because the high-end ceiling of Brenden Donovan at that point wouldn't be as easy to visualize if he came off of a season in which he underperformed. I would extend him off of that season too, and I think the Cardinals should consider it as well. Number 4 on my list, and this one already gets spicy, because I'm going to talk about J.J. Weatherholt right now. Now, I really like what the Cardinals have done with Weatherholt by sending him to Double-A Springfield to begin the season, rather than starting him off at Peoria, which would have been the opportunity for him in High A. He basically skipped it. He went from Low A straight to Double A, and that season is beginning in short order. Last year, in the limited opportunity he got in Palm Beach, which is the Low A affiliate of the Cardinals, 126 plate appearances. He had a .295 batting average. He had a .405 on base, which is probably the statistic and the number that you circle and you put it in bold, and you put it in italics, and you highlight it. Because at 21 years old, fresh out of West Virginia, He went to low A and was on base 405, right? He had 16 walks and 15 strikeouts and 126 plate appearances. So pretty good strikeout rate. I mean, considering what the norm is at this day and age in baseball. And he walked more than he struck out, right? That was my bold prediction this year for Lars Nootbaar, that he would walk more times than he strikes out. Only Juan Soto and Steven Kwan, I think, were the two that did it in MLB last year. Nootbaar's on a pace to do it so far, but it's obviously very early. But in the case of J.J. Weatherholt, his 805 OPS, you go, all right, that's like fine for low A, but what's it going to look like when he gets bumped up? The fact that he had a 405 on base, and it tends to be the case that you develop a little bit more power as you go, I feel like J.J. Weatherholt's in a great spot. Now, in spring, they threw his feet to the fire in 26 plate appearances. He only had 2 hits. He had 26 plate appearances, 20 at-bats, had 2 hits, and he also had 6 walks. So once again in spring, even though he didn't jump off the page with his batting average, it was 100. He was 2 for 20. He had 6 walks to 5 strikeouts. Stole 3 bases. He did hit a home run. That was a crazy day when he homered. I was there at Roger Dean. 558 the OPS, but the fact that he was on base 308, that's still notable to me. All right, they're going to jump him right to Double A. And let's be real. Is it clickbait? You can say, oh, Brenden, you're doing clickbait because you said the 5 players that you'd want to extend today, but you're going to then add a caveat to J.J. Weatherholt and say, well, don't actually extend him today necessarily. But I think the day that they're ready to call J.J. Weatherholt up, that might be September of this year. That might be April of next year. Whatever that day is. Extend him that day. I think we know the pedigree. The Cardinals have not had very many top 10 draft selections. I think J.D. Drew was the last one before Weatherholt. And of course, they're going to get one later on this summer. We'll see who that ends up being. A lot of people may be crossing their fingers for Ethan Holiday, but we'll see. But J.J. Weatherholt, I think, is one of those players who's going to have a very high floor, and we'll find out what the ceiling is. But anytime you've got a player with a high floor, the sentiment is that you're not necessarily going to regret the contract extension. Like if the Red Sox with Kristian Campbell decide that, we thought he was going to be this great player, and it turns out he's more of a floor guy, which I don't think is going to happen. He homered today. He's been pretty unbelievable for the first week of the season. Can't necessarily blame him for signing him the way that they did. I'm looking at the contract details, though, from Chris Cotillo, and here's the reason that I think it makes a ton of sense to sign J.J. Weatherholt when the moment comes to a contract as comparable as you can find. And this actually tracks for the Cardinals in modern day. Even though they're kind of maybe a little bit tighter on the purse strings, wondering what future revenues are going to look like, Kristian Campbell got a $2 million signing bonus, so relatively meager. He's making $100 million. He's making $1 million in 2025. It would have been like $750K. It's essentially the same, just a little bit of a bump. Because those guys before their pre-arb are playing on the major league minimum plus usually whatever service time adds a little bit of an escalator. 2026 for Kristian Campbell, $2 million. $3 million in 27. $4 million in 28. Then it goes $6 million, $9 million, $13 million, $16 million. The first 6 years of that contract are basically years before he would have been eligible for free agency. So you're talking about 2025, 26, 27. They're going to pay him $6 million. They only would have had to have paid him like two and a half. And if he wins Rookie of the Year, that gives you a bump, whatever. They're giving him a little bit extra on the front end, plus that $2 million signing bonus that he got. So like $5.5 million additional compared to what they would have had to have been responsible for over his first 3 years. That's basically like an extra $1.75 million per year, if you're counting the signing bonus. Minuscule, right? Then he would have gone into arbitration eligibility. That year, it's $4 million. What would have been his first year of ARB is $4 million. Would he have gotten $4 in ARB? Probably. If he's a really good player, probably. But think about the Cardinals from this past year. They were in like the $2 million, $3 million range. So, I mean, let me give Lars Nootbaar as an example. He got $2.95 million from the Cardinals his first year of ARB, a little less than $3 million. Donnie was $2.85 million. So let's say Campbell is better than both, and Donnie and Newt have been really solid players. maybe he gets that 4. But maybe he doesn't, right? The Red Sox guaranteed him the 4. So if we're kind of weighing out player-friendly, team-friendly, maybe for that third year, it wouldn't have been the case. Remember, he's already racked up the $2 million in bonus signing money that he got at the very beginning of the deal. 2029, all right? This is way down the road. $6 million in ARB2. What do we think about that? Yeah, usually you get an escalator, so if you were worth $4 million, you probably would have been more like $7 or $8 million in ARB2. Again, we're assuming this guy's going to be a star. ARB3 would have been 2030, $9 million. Yeah, he probably would have made it, but he's guaranteed it today. Nothing else matters. So again, I'm offering up why it's an incentive for Campbell, but it's also, let's say he is a star. What are the ARB records usually by the time for ARB3? 15 million, 18 million, 20 million? What did Kyle Tucker just get from the Cubs? I'm typing it in now. He just got $16.5 million. He wanted $17.5. The Cubs wanted $15. I believe they settled for $16.5. All right, so Campbell making $9 with the Red Sox in that same year is obviously less. But remember all the money that he's been able to add to his contract on the front end. And then you get into the years that would have been free agent years. This is where really the team, I think, makes out like bandits if this is a player that you're pretty excited about long term. 2031, he's making $13 million. 2032, he's making $16. And then there's a club option for $19 million in 2033 with a $4 million buyout, which means basically put that buyout onto the final year of the guaranteed deal. Instead of 16, he makes 20. Just do that mentally. Because it tells you that for the 2 years of free agency that the Red Sox bought out, they're guaranteeing him $33 million, which is $16.5 per year. Has played a handful of games in his career. Has locked that up. Could he have waited it out? Sure. How many times have we seen guys come up and flame out? Right? Like they go back to AAA, they're between. Think about a guy like Dylan Carlson right now, who's still kind of bopping between AAA and the big leagues with the Orioles. Dylan Carlson was a top prospect at one time. Could Dylan Carlson have maybe been a $50, $60, $70 million extension candidate when he first came up? Maybe. It didn't happen that way. So if you're Campbell, makes sense. But if you're the Cardinals, if you're the Red Sox, and you're thinking about a guy like J.J. Weatherholt, would you do that deal? Guarantee him $60 million? Because what if he is the superstar you've been waiting for? Well, I mean, you've got him locked up till 2034. Basically 10 years. Because there's a $21 million club option on Kristian Campbell a decade from now. I think it's just that simple, right? Like, that is a way to structure a contract where I don't think the Red Sox can lose. Especially if you believe that Kristian Campbell has a floor. I don't know anything about his defense. But I feel like if his defense is any good, all right, at a minimum, you're talking about 8 years from now, okay, you got to pay him $16 million. Even if he's a league average player offensively, that ends up being a pretty team-friendly contract, but one that we've articulated why it actually makes sense as well for Kristian Campbell. So if it's not today because J.J. Weatherholt hasn't played a game in AA, I get it. I would look, if I'm the Cardinals, at extending him in a similar capacity the very first day that they're ready to call him up to the big leagues. Next on my list, number 3, I'm going to go with Jordan Walker. There's a little bit more risk associated with Jordan Walker, I think, than the top 2 names on this list, because I don't necessarily think that defensively he eventually profiles, even at his peak, as a plus defender in right field. Will he stick in right field at all? Maybe remains to be seen. I think he can end up being solid out there for sure, but I don't necessarily ever believe that defense is going to be something that drives a portion of his value to a team when you're talking about a contract. But if you're the Cardinals and you basically say, look, he was a first-round pick for a reason. He flew through the minor league system. We see the way that he impacts the baseball. And look, I'm not saying in any of these cases that the players are going to accept the offer. But I'm just talking about the Cardinals starting a conversation, which I don't really think there's been many of, which, again, is attributed to the front office transition, the place where ownership feels about the payroll and stuff like that. But I'm looking at it going, you want to talk about an all-time value. Like, is there any aspect in the back of Jordan Walker's mind that's like, you know what, better lock that up because, you know, what if I end up not panning out as the the superstar, as the first-round caliber name that I have been my whole life. It's not that you're not willing to bet on yourself, but just like, let's be realistic. I can set up my family for generations with a contract right now. I don't know what it would look like. I don't know if it's 80 million, 90 million, 100 million. Depends on how many years, depends on the structure. But I would be comfortable enough to approach Jordan Walker right now from the Cardinals because I do believe in him. I do believe in his offensive game translating. Already this season, Jordan Walker is off to a hot start. Has an OPS of 1056. He's on base 500, impacting the baseball in tremendous ways. He's hitting 389. We'll see what ends up happening for the season. I think Jordan Walker is going to pan out. And I think Jordan Walker thinks Jordan Walker is going to pan out. But if there's any semblance of, hey, we can get that security, we can know that I'm going to be a face of this team, I would offer it to him right now. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think I'd be comfortable with whatever they are. Because even though there's a perception of a little bit more risk, because what if he doesn't hit? His whole value comes from hitting. You're not going to put him in the field just to be a fielder. It's because he's going to rake that you want him in there. I trust it. I think he's going to be a really good hitter over the course of his career, and there might still be enough of a shadow of a doubt based on recent history where you get more of a discount than you ought to have. And again, I'm not speaking for Jordan Walker to know if he's looking for that, but if he's open to it, amenable to it, wouldn't you rather do it now before he has the potential season that you're thinking he can have? Back to he was a 787 OPS in 2023. Right now he's at 1056. So I would put Jordan Walker on this list without him having much of a defensive profile. The next two names on this list I think are locked and loaded ironclad because they both have that defensive profile, which means one guy that would have been an honorable mention just missed my list, but I would still consider it. Ivan Herrera, I think, is somebody that you should be considering as well. Just imagine if and look, the part of this that's cool is if you're paying these guys up front, maybe a little signing bonus, maybe a little, whatever the case is, bump for the 2025, 2026 salaries, the money is still not significant compared to what you were giving them, right? The raise is coming. You're going to have to do a little bit up front, and maybe the Cardinals aren't comfortable with that with these guys or anybody at this point because of the uncertainty of the finances. But if you do it now, it's probably cash that's on hand, right? You can afford it. And then when you think about the back ends of these deals, they're not prohibitive in that regard either. It's going to be in the teens. Whatever the final years of any of these deals are is like 15 million, 17 million. That happens 5 or 6 or 8 years down the road, depending on who we're talking about. So that's where it's like, it doesn't kill you later, even if this player falls off the map. But also right now, it's something that could be affordable to be able to lock in these totals to then have a core of a handful of guys that by the time you are looking to spend a little bit more and you are looking to supplement with free agency, your core of talent is already locked in rather than having to fight with all of them in ARB and then basically kind of saying, well, our hands are tied. We've got to trade away some of these guys rather than keep them because we waited too long. Their values are too high. And again, all these players know that they're valuable commodities. They're valuable players, so they're not going to agree to anything that's not a beneficial deal to them. But I think a lot of guys would be amenable. I mean, guys like Brenden Donovan, Lars Newpart said, yeah, I mean, the conversations just didn't really happen. It's not to say I wasn't open to them. So I would look at that situation for these next two guys, specifically because I think the floor is pretty solid for both of them because of the defense that we expect to see them play. I'm going Victor Scott II for my number 2 player on this list of 5 players I think the Cardinals should be offering contract extensions to today. Victor Scott II might have the highest upside offensively of anybody on this list because of what he can do running the bases, getting on base at a decent clip, hitting home runs potentially as well, and then the defense, I think, is probably a particularly high ceiling as well. He's already off to a really strong start, but I think that would be a great time to say lock him in. Again, look at the Kristian Campbell deal. Something similar, I would vouch for that. I would say that makes sense. None of those years, like when's the first year that the Boston Red Sox are at risk of potentially going, you know what, we overpaid Kristian Campbell? Is it the $1 million this year, the $2 million next year, the $3 million in 2027? $3 million. I mean, the Cardinals paid Phil Maton a couple mil, right? I think he's going to be good for him this year. Don't get me wrong. But that's just chump change in the term of like the grand scheme of Major League Baseball. $4 million in 2028, which would have been an ARB year for Campbell. How about $6 million in 29? It's not until you get to $9 million in 2030 for Kristian Campbell where you go, gosh darn, I really hope he's good, because if he's not, we're starting to eat a little bit of cash here. That's so far from now, and he'll basically have a full career for some guys before that point and never get to a point where it's particularly expensive. And if he's the guy you hope he is, you'll be glad you did it. You'll be glad you did it. So I feel that way with Victor Scott II. I think he's going to be another guy that you want to build around. And the Cardinals have a lot of guys in this same stage of their careers. To be able to say this is our core, I think would reinvigorate the fan base. You guys can let me know if I'm wrong about this in the comments. I know and have seen a lot of what y'all said over the offseason. Disappointed. The Cardinals really didn't do much. You're kind of in wait-and-see mode. But if they said, hey, we're gonna lock up guys like Donovan. We're going to lock up Victor Scott. We're going to lock up either Herrera or Newt Barr or whatever the case may be, Jordan Walker. And when Weatherholt's ready, we're going to offer that. We're going to put that offer to him. And if he takes it, great. And if he doesn't, then what can you do? You offered, right? We're going to do those things because we want Cardinals fans to know that our core is going to be here. These are the players that they can rally around for the next World Championship window. I think Victor Scott II is a very toolsy player that should be a part of that. And my number one on the list is a guy who has all the tools as well. And he has the face of the franchise potential. And I know he's off to a slow start this season. I don't see Mason Winn flaming out. I think he's a safe pick. He's going to have a long and prosperous career in the big leagues. Is he going to be the best hitter on every team he's on? No, probably not. Right? Because there are other guys with a little bit more of a demonstration to this point of upside. But I will say this. Mason Winn had 15 home runs last year as a rookie. You know, he had a 730 OPS, which more than held his own. Still a guy that, I mean, again, in the context of guys who strike out a bunch, 109 Ks and 657 plate appearances. 637 plate appearances, so not quite as many. This year, yeah, he struck out an inordinate amount so far. He's at a 40% K rate compared to his plate appearances. I don't think it's going to stick. I don't think Mason Winn is going to struggle for very much longer. And if there's any inkling of Mason Winn going, and again, he's going to bet on himself, right? These guys aren't necessarily scrambling for these extensions, but who wouldn't, if they were offered these types of conversations, at least entertain them? Because it's an indication that the team believes in you, wants to reward you for your talents and your skill set, and then say, we're going to plant our flag on you. Don't lowball the guy, but right now, I mean, if you went to Mason Winn and said, hey, this is something we value, for a guy that has gotten off to a bit of a slow start, again, I don't think the start would really bake in very much to, like, I don't think you're getting a discount because of it. But you're also not in a situation where, like Kristian Campbell, he started the season like gangbusters, and they're like, shoot, we got to extend this guy. We've seen enough. Do it with Mason Winn right now when he's on the downturn and see that you reap the benefits. Offer him the same contract you would have a week ago, because I think he's still that same guy. He's hitting 091. That's going to be a blip on the radar. And the other thing that you can pretty much be rest assured by, if Mason Winn ends up as a below league average hitter, like if he's Pete Kozma at the plate, and before I lock into that comparison, I want to take another look and make sure that I am totally comfortable. I want to look at his career OPS plus. All right, maybe not Pete Kozma at the plate, because he had a 56 OPS plus. Who's a guy that I would maybe make the comp to? What about like Cesar Izturis from back in the day? What was his career OPS plus? You got to be kidding me. When I pulled it up on Baseball Reference, I clicked the one that had the minor league page, which does not show you OPS plus. Cesar Izturis was a 64 OPS plus. So that's still pretty low. there's no way to me that Mason Winn's going to be a career 614 OPS. But like Cesar Asturias played 13 years in the big leagues. Was a solid defender. Mason Winn's going to be more than a solid defender at shortstop. He's going to be one of the better, if not best, defenders in the league defensively at one of the most premium positions for a long, long time. I think the Cardinals can be very comfortable saying, let's offer him the extension, because if that's the position where it ends up being more of a, and now here's a comp that's not going to be necessarily the way that I want to frame it, but think about the career of Ozzie Smith, which is, again, not me saying that Mason Winn's just a one-way ticket into the Hall of Fame, but take Ozzie Smith's career offense of an 87 OPS plus and a 666 OPS, 262 average, 337 on base, 328 slug. I think Mason Winn will outslug that for sure. But he won't be Ozzie defensively because very few ever have been. But what if he's 75% of Ozzie defensively? What if he is one of the top shortstops in the game, but he's just not like the greatest defensive shortstop ever? What if he's just really, really, really good defensively, which he is, and he's an 87 OPS plus? All right, that guy made the Hall of Fame, by the way. Probably one of the most popular Cardinals of all time. As much as I started by saying, well, Mason Winn can't do that, like let's be careful about comparing him to Ozzie. Think about the drive and the motivation this kid has to be the best. I think defensively, he's not going to be Ozzie because nobody really ever was. But I think Ozzie Smith is actually a comp where you could say, and again, let's just boil this down, not to all the intangibles of, I'm not saying Mason's going to start doing backflips. But think about the opportunity that a guy like Mason Winn has to be a defense-first shortstop that can try to go out there and win Gold Gloves. Now, he's got to win the first one first. That's the main area where you're not going to make a comp to Ozzie, who had 13 Gold Gloves. But Ozzie Smith at an 87 career OPS plus, that just is my way to illustrate the value of what Mason Winn could be. If you believe, like I do, that Mason Winn can be a plus defensive shortstop for a long, long time, offer the extension today. Because is he going to be less than an 87 OPS plus and a 660 OPS for his career? He could be. I wouldn't bet on it. I'd bet on him to have a little more pop in the bat than we saw from Ozzie. Ozzie had 28 career home runs. I hate this has kind of turned into like the Bash Ozzie hour when he's like one of the greatest Cardinals ever. But I'm doing this to illustrate that like Mason had 15 homers last year as a rookie. I think Mason Winn can end up with at least a career OPS plus of 87. I think Mason Winn has an upside still where he figures it out. He homers 15 to 20 to 25 times per year. He steals 25 bases. He doubles 30 times. He's hitting 270 with a 340 on base and a 440, 410 slugging percentage. What's that, a 750 OPS with being a Gold Glove finalist year in, year out? The floor for Mason Winn is so unbelievably high that I don't really need him to have a ceiling outcome to say sign him today. Sign him yesterday to a long-term contract. It's all about the floor. Because if you're worried about a contract working out poorly, I don't think the Mason Winn contract is the one that would. And again, he doesn't have to sign it, but you got to offer it to get him to have a chance to sign it. I think Mason Winn's going to be a career OPS plus between 100, 105, 110, right? Ceiling could be even higher than that. His defense is really, really sound. He's a franchise type of player. I think you extend him today. And if you do have the next Ozzie Smith on your hands, you're thanking your lucky stars for the years that you ended up locking him into a contract where you didn't have to pay market value. Again, with a lot of these players on this list, with Mason Winn, with Victor Scott, and I think with Brenden Donovan, who's a Gold Glove winner that we know what he's going to be at the plate offensively, he's going to be that, kind of Ben Zobrist type as well at the plate. I think the floor is high for a lot of these guys. J.J. Weatherholt, I think the floor is high. We don't know a lot yet, but again, the on-base skills, he's going to develop the power. Right now, he's sticking at shortstop. He'll probably move to another position. I think a high floor guy. Walker's the one guy that maybe on this list profiles a little bit differently, and he'd be more comparable to like a Navan Herrera, where you say, well, I don't know defensively what the value is, but I know he can rake. I think that's sort of the appeal in that regard. Mason Winn, though, has the chance to potentially do both. And you know he's going to do it defensively. And you know that whatever floor he's going to have offensively, I don't see him doing the struggle bus like we've seen the last week. That's a blip on the radar, a moment in time. I think Mason Wynn's a guy you extend right now if you're the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's a guy that you can then sell to the fan base and say, look, he's going to be around. We understand that you wanted us to maybe do a little bit more. Buy into what we're doing right now because more in the best is yet to come. Let me know if I'm crazy right now, Cardinals fans, with the names I came up here with on this list, but I went number 5, Brendan Donovan, number 4, J.J. Weatherholt, number 3, Jordan Walker, number 2, Victor Scott II, number 1, Mason Winn. Offering those guys contract extensions. Lars Nootbaar and Navan Herrera, by the way, are the notable honorable mentions, and I'll even throw a guy like Quinn Matthews in there too, because I think that would be a little bit interesting. I hesitated to do pitchers because there's just a lot of uncertainty with pitchers, but he'd probably be the one that you would definitely consider. Talking about those early extensions, right? Let me know what you think, Cardinals fans. Who did I not name on this list that you think merited consideration? I want to know who you would extend right now as a Cardinals fan if you had the opportunity to put a contract in front of one of the next faces of the Cardinals franchise. Let me know what you think, and make sure you hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. We've gone pretty long with this one, but I was getting pretty excited talking about these details and these players. Make sure to take a look as well, before you get out of here, at the video description below, the link to sign up for the YouTube membership. Appreciate those who have done so already. If you want to join, you can do that right now with that link, and join the free Discord, which is going to be in the link below as well. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me, for listening to this off-day version of the B-Schaeff Daily Podcast, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace!